My name is Wade Harrison, and 14 years ago, I thought I'd found my forever. Melissa and I met at a community barbecue in Chandler, one of those neighborhood block parties where the beer flows freely and everyone pretends to be more social than they actually are. She was working her way up the administrative ladder at Phoenix General Hospital, sharp as a tack, and ambitious in that quiet, determined way that caught my attention immediately. I was a licensed electrician building my own contracting business, Harrison Electric, with dreams bigger than my bank account but a work ethic that could power half of Arizona. We were both ambitious in our own ways, both looking for something solid in this desert heat we call home. She appreciated that I could fix anything that sparked or hummed, and I respected her ability to navigate the complex politics of hospital administration. When we married at 28, everyone said we made perfect sense together. The hard-working electrician and the hospital administrator. Blue collar meets white collar, but it worked like a well-wired circuit. Now, at 39, I run Harrison Electric with 3 trucks, a small crew of reliable guys, and steady contracts throughout the Phoenix metro area. We specialize in residential and commercial wiring, everything from rewiring old ranch houses in Tempe to installing complex electrical systems in new office buildings. It's honest work that pays well enough to support the kind of life Melissa and I had built together. Melissa, 36, had climbed her way to hospital administrator, pulling down $85K a year, managing everything from supply chains to staff schedules, budget planning to regulatory compliance. She was good at her job, respected by colleagues, and frankly earned every dollar of that salary dealing with the bureaucratic nightmare that is modern healthcare administration. We had the kind of life that looks solid from the outside. A 3-bedroom ranch house in a decent Chandler, neighborhood with mature palm trees, and a backyard big enough for the pool we kept talking about installing. 2 reliable vehicles parked in our driveway, my work truck and her Honda Accord. A mortgage we could actually handle without losing sleep, which in today's Arizona real estate market was no small accomplishment. Weekend trips to Sedona when work allowed, backyard barbecues with neighbors who'd become genuine friends over the years, and a savings account that wasn't completely pathetic. We had season tickets to the Diamondbacks, a standing Friday night dinner reservation at our favorite Mexican place, and the comfortable routine of a couple who'd found their rhythm after more than a decade together. For the past 8 months, we'd been trying for a baby. Not desperately, not with charts and temperature taking and ovulation kits, but naturally, hopefully, the kind of trying where you stop using protection and see what happens, where every late period brings a flutter of excitement and every negative test brings a small disappointment you quickly shake off. Melissa would joke about converting my workshop into a nursery, which always made me laugh, because she knew damn well I'd never give up my perfectly organized tool room. I'd already started researching the best elementary schools in our district, bookmark websites about youth sports leagues. We talked about names over morning coffee, Emma for a girl, maybe Jake for a boy, and imagine little league games where we'd be the parents cheering from the sidelines, embarrassing our kid with our enthusiasm. But something had been shifting lately, subtle changes that I initially dismissed as normal work stress. Melissa seemed distracted during our conversations, checking her phone more frequently than usual. Those late-night emergency calls from the hospital had become more common, and she'd started showering immediately when she came home from work, claiming she needed to wash off the hospital smell that never used to bother her. Her laptop, which used to sit open on the kitchen counter where we'd both use it, was now password protected. She'd developed new interests, working late on Fridays, attending weekend professional development seminars that she'd never mentioned before. Small things, but when you're an electrician, you learn to pay attention to small irregularities before they become major system failures. Then came that Tuesday evening in November, one of those perfect Arizona autumn nights when the temperature drops just enough to remind you why people move to the desert. I was in our master bathroom looking for aspirin, nursing a headache from wrestling with some particularly stubborn wiring at a commercial job all day. The kind of headache that comes from staring at circuit diagrams and troubleshooting electrical problems that don't want to be solved. Melissa was downstairs making dinner, something that smelled like garlic and oregano. And I was digging through her makeup bag where she sometimes kept the good painkillers, the prescription stuff left over from her dental work last year. That's when I found them, buried beneath her foundation and lipstick like contraband. a fresh pack of birth control pills, still sealed in the pharmacy bag, the prescription label crisp and new. The date was from last week. Dr. Sarah Chen, gynecologist, take one daily. I stared at that orange prescription bottle for what felt like an eternity, my electrician's mind automatically processing the information like I was troubleshooting a faulty circuit that didn't make sense according to the wiring diagram. We'd been actively trying to conceive for 8 months. Why would my wife, who wanted nothing more than to start a family with me, secretly be taking birth control? The rational explanations felt hollow, even as I tried to convince myself there had to be a logical reason. Maybe her doctor prescribed them for some medical reason I didn't know about. Maybe there was some perfectly innocent explanation that would make me feel like an idiot for even questioning it. But as I stood there holding that prescription bottle, a cold realization settled in my chest, like Arizona morning frost before sunrise. The late meetings that always seemed to coincide with dinner time, the guarded phone that was now constantly face down on surfaces, the immediate post-work showers that had become religious routine. The pieces weren't forming a picture I wanted to see, but they were forming one nonetheless, like a circuit diagram that reveals a short you've been trying to ignore. I photographed the prescription with my phone, making sure to capture the date, dosage instructions, and prescribing physician information. Then, I carefully placed it back exactly where I found it, arranging her makeup to cover it just as it had been. Every detail had to remain undisturbed. If there was something to discover, I couldn't tip my hand by being careless. But something fundamental had shifted in my marriage during those 30 seconds in our bathroom. A connection had been severed, and I wasn't sure it could ever be properly rewired. The next morning, Melissa kissed me goodbye, as always, her lips warm with coffee and the familiar routine of 14 years together. She had no idea that everything had changed, that I'd discovered what might be the first loose wire in what would prove to be an elaborate electrical system of deception. As her Honda Accord disappeared around the corner toward Phoenix General, I stood at our front window, making a decision that would define the next chapter of my life. I needed to know the truth, even if that truth would short-circuit everything we'd built together. I became a detective in my own home, and I hated myself for it. But once that seed of doubt was planted, I couldn't ignore the growing evidence that my 14-year marriage was running on faulty wiring that could spark into something dangerous at any moment. The next few weeks turned into a masterclass in covert observation, applying the same methodical troubleshooting approach I use for complex electrical problems. I started paying attention to details I'd previously dismissed as normal hospital administrator stress, the kind of occupational hazards that come with managing healthcare bureaucracy. How Melissa's emergency calls always seemed to come during dinner, interrupting our conversations with urgent crises that couldn't wait until morning. How she'd suddenly developed an interest in working late on Fridays, staying for budget reviews and staff evaluations that had never been part of her schedule before. How her laptop was now password protected when it had never required security in our own home. I began documenting everything with the same systematic approach I used when diagnosing electrical failures. Create a timeline, identify patterns, isolate variables, test hypotheses. Thursday night, Melissa claimed to be at a budget meeting until 10 p.m., but when I drove past Phoenix General around 8:30, her designated parking spot in the administrative section was empty. The security lights illuminated row after row of empty spaces where hospital administrators' cars should have been. Friday evening, she said she was grabbing drinks with her colleague Lisa from the nursing staff to discuss staffing issues and upcoming policy changes. Professional networking, she called it. The kind of after-hours relationship building that was essential for effective hospital administration. But when Lisa called the house at 9:15 looking for Melissa, asking if she wanted to join a group of nurses going out for drinks, my blood ran cold. "Oh, she must have meant next Friday," I lied smoothly to Lisa, my voice betraying nothing of the nausea rising in my throat like electrical current through a grounded circuit. "I'll tell her you called." The lies were getting sloppy, which meant either Melissa was getting careless or she simply didn't think I was paying close enough attention to catch the inconsistencies. Both possibilities stung with their own particular brand of insult. I started checking our cell phone records online, scrolling through months of call logs and text message timestamps, with the obsessive attention to detail that had made me a successful electrician. Pattern recognition was my specialty. finding the anomalies that revealed system problems before they caused major failures. There it was, hidden in plain sight like a loose wire in a junction box, a number that appeared with increasing frequency over the past 4 months, always during work hours when I assumed she was handling administrative duties, sometimes late at night after I'd gone to bed, believing she was reviewing reports or preparing for morning meetings. The calls were long, intimate in their duration, 30 minutes here, 45 minutes there, sometimes, over an hour of conversation. These weren't quick work check-ins about supply orders or staffing schedules. These were the kind of extended phone conversations that suggested personal connection, emotional intimacy, the development of a relationship that had nothing to do with hospital administration. My hands shook as I reverse searched the number through one of those online directory services. The name that came back hit me like touching a live wire. Shane Martinez, age 34, orthopedic surgeon at Phoenix General Hospital. His LinkedIn profile showed he was recently divorced, pulling down at least $400K a year with the kind of professional headshot that screamed available bachelor looking for sophisticated company. I found myself driving past the hospital during lunch hours, conducting surveillance on my own wife like some kind of private investigator, looking for her Honda in the staff parking garage, learning the rhythm of her actual schedule versus the fictional one she'd been feeding me at home. It was there, parked consistently in the same section as a white Mercedes that matched Shane's vehicle registration information. They weren't just colleagues sharing professional lunches. They were meeting regularly, parking near each other, spending extended time together during hours when both should have been focused on their respective medical responsibilities. The worst part wasn't the betrayal itself, though that cut deep enough. It was how normal everything continued to feel at home, like we were still the same couple we'd always been. Melissa still kissed me goodbye in the morning, still asked about my electrical jobs and whether I'd picked up any interesting new contracts. She still curled up next to me in bed watching Netflix, commenting on shows, laughing at the same jokes that had entertained us for years. She was living 2 completely separate lives with such casual expertise that I wondered how long this had actually been going on. The phone records only went back 4 months through our online account, but this level of comfort, this practiced deception, suggested a much longer timeline. One evening, I decided to test her directly. Heard they're expanding the orthopedic department at Phoenix General, I mentioned casually over dinner, watching her face for any telltale signs of recognition. Big renovation project coming up. You know any of those doctors personally? Might be good connections for my electrical business. Melissa's expression remained perfectly neutral as she replied, "Not really. Different departments, different worlds. Administration doesn't interact much with the surgical staff unless there's a budget issue or compliance problem." The lie came so easily, so naturally, that I realized I was married to someone I didn't actually know at all. I needed concrete proof, something undeniable that would justify what was already forming in my mind, not just divorce proceedings, but something far more satisfying than legal documentation. Because by this point, a plan was beginning to take shape, methodical and technical, perfectly suited to an electrician who understood how systems could be manipulated to produce specific results. That night, as Melissa slept peacefully beside me, her breathing deep and untroubled by guilt or conscience, I made a decision that would fundamentally alter both our lives. I was done being the faithful husband getting played for a fool by his cheating wife and her wealthy doctor boyfriend. It was time to stop being the victim and start being the architect of justice. Electrical work had taught me that the best solutions are elegant in their simplicity. Complex systems fail because they have too many components, too many variables that can go wrong, too many points where human error can cause catastrophic malfunction. What I needed was a plan that was foolproof, untraceable, and devastating in its effectiveness. I spent a week researching surveillance equipment online, ordering everything with next-day delivery to my electrical contracting office rather than our home address. Micro cameras the size of standard electrical components, recording devices that could be hidden inside junction boxes, motion-activated systems that would capture everything automatically without requiring manual operation. The beauty of being a licensed electrician with 14 years of experience was that I had legitimate reasons to be installing things throughout our house, upgrading outlets here, replacing switches there, improving lighting in bedrooms, updating electrical panels for better efficiency. Melissa never questioned my work. She was used to me tinkering with our home's electrical systems, making improvements that saved us money on utility bills. I installed the first camera in our guest bedroom on a Wednesday afternoon, while Melissa was at her department meeting, which I now understood was code for extended time, with Shane. The device was virtually invisible, positioned inside what looked like a standard smoke detector, but was actually a full HD recording system with night vision capability and motion activation. The master bedroom camera went inside an electrical outlet cover, carefully wired to look like standard residential electrical work, but actually housing sophisticated surveillance equipment. The living room unit was built into what appeared to be a routine electrical box inspection plate, the kind of maintenance work that any professional electrician might perform during a service call. Every installation was performed to the same standards I applied to commercial electrical jobs. Professional grade, completely undetectable to anyone who wasn't specifically looking for surveillance equipment, and designed to operate reliably for extended periods without maintenance or detection. But surveillance alone wouldn't be enough to satisfy what was building inside me. I needed something more personal, more immediate, something that would make them both understand the depth of their betrayal on a visceral, unforgettable level. That's when I remembered the capsaicin powder I'd purchased several years ago, when we had problems with rabbits eating Melissa's vegetable garden. She'd been so proud of those tomatoes and peppers, spending hours every weekend tending to plants that kept getting decimated by wildlife. The powder was essentially concentrated pepper extract, designed to be invisible when properly applied, but intensely irritating to mucous membranes. I drove to 3 different pharmacies across different parts of Phoenix to purchase personal lubricant, paying cash each time to avoid creating any paper trail that could be traced back to me later. Using the same precision I applied to mixing electrical compounds and solutions, I carefully created a capsaicin mixture that would cause significant discomfort and panic, but not permanent physical damage. I wasn't trying to maim anyone or cause lasting injury. I just wanted to deliver a message they would never, ever forget. A lesson about consequences that would be immediate, undeniable, and impossible to ignore or rationalize away. The final piece of my plan required perfect timing and an airtight alibi that would place me far from Phoenix when everything went down. The Arizona Medical Conference in Tucson was perfect, a legitimate professional development event that would provide genuine documentation of my presence 200 miles away from whatever happened in my house. I registered for the conference immediately, selecting sessions on electrical safety in healthcare facilities and energy-efficient building systems. Professional development that would benefit Harrison Electric while serving as ironclad proof of my whereabouts. I even posted about it on social media, creating a digital trail that would demonstrate my documented presence in Tucson during the critical time frame. 2 days before my scheduled departure, I carefully replaced Melissa's personal items with my modified versions, substituting the capsaicin-treated lubricant for her regular supply. She never examined them closely. Why would she? They looked exactly the same, felt the same weight, bore the same brand packaging and expiration dates. Perfect replicas with one crucial difference that would become apparent only during use. I also completed the setup for remote access to all surveillance cameras through a secure smartphone app, encrypted and routed through servers that would leave no traceable digital footprint. From my hotel room in Tucson, I'd have real-time access to multiple camera feeds from my own house, watching whatever unfolded while maintaining perfect documentation of my alibi. The night before I left, Melissa seemed almost excited about my upcoming trip, more affectionate than she'd been in recent months. "I'll miss you," she said, kissing me with more genuine enthusiasm than I'd experienced in weeks. There was something in her eyes that I now recognize as anticipation, not for my return, but for the opportunity my absence would provide. "It's only 2 nights," I reminded her, playing the devoted husband role one final time. "I'll be back Sunday evening with boring stories about electrical code updates and new safety regulations." As my truck headed south toward Tucson on Interstate 10 early Friday morning, I felt a strange mixture of anticipation and dread settling in my stomach, like electrical current running through a circuit that's about to overload. In less than 48 hours, my marriage would be over, but justice would finally be served with the precision of a perfectly wired electrical system. The Marriott in Tucson became my command center for the most important surveillance operation of my life. I attended exactly 2 conference sessions: electrical safety standards in healthcare environments and energy efficiency retrofitting for commercial buildings. Just enough to establish my documented presence and collect the materials that would prove my attendance. But my real focus was the tablet propped up on my hotel desk, showing 4 different camera feeds from my house back in Phoenix. Multiple angles, high-definition video, perfect audio quality, motion-activated recording that would capture every detail of whatever transpired in my absence. For the first day this Thursday, absolutely nothing happened that seemed unusual. Melissa came home at her regular time, heated up leftover Chinese takeout from our favorite restaurant, watched a medical drama on television, went to bed at her normal hour. I began to wonder if I'd miscalculated the timing, if maybe she'd decided to maintain her normal routine while I was away. But Friday evening changed everything in the most dramatic way possible. At 6:47 p.m., I watched Melissa come through our front door carrying a bottle of expensive wine and takeout bags from Romano's Macaroni Grill, the upscale Italian restaurant we only visited for special occasions, like anniversaries or birthday celebrations. She was wearing the red dress I'd bought her for our last anniversary, the elegant one she claimed was too fancy for everyday wear, too sophisticated for casual dinners at home. She moved through our house with nervous energy that was visible even through the surveillance cameras, lighting candles throughout the living room, adjusting lighting to create ambiance, checking her appearance in the hallway mirror multiple times. This wasn't the behavior of someone planning a quiet evening alone. This was careful preparation for a romantic encounter. At 7:20, a white Mercedes-Benz pulled into our driveway with the confidence of someone who'd made this trip before. Shane Martinez stepped out wearing expensive casual clothes and carrying yellow roses, Melissa's favorite flowers, the same ones Old been buying for her, every Valentine's Day for the past 14 years. Watching him walk up to my front door carrying flowers for my wife was the moment I truly understood what pure rage felt like. It wasn't the explosive emotional anger I'd expected. It was cold and precise, like the controlled energy that flows through high-voltage electrical systems, dangerous, powerful, and perfectly directed toward its intended target. Melissa opened the door before he could knock, throwing her arms around him with the kind of physical intimacy that spoke of an established relationship, not a new affair. They kissed on my doorstep with passionate familiarity, not the awkward uncertainty of people still figuring each other out, but the comfortable heat of lovers who'd been together long enough to know exactly what they wanted. They moved to the living room, where I watched them share wine and conversation, with the relaxed ease of 2 people who'd done this many times before. Shane made Melissa laugh in ways I couldn't remember seeing in months, touching her arm, whispering things that made her smile with genuine happiness. She played with her hair, exhibited all the flirtatious behaviors that had once been reserved exclusively for me during our early dating years. At 9:35 p.m., Melissa took Shane by the hand and led him toward our guest bedroom, the same room where I'd installed my most sophisticated surveillance equipment. My heart pounded as I realized this was the moment everything I'd planned would come to fruition. I switched to the bedroom camera feed and began recording everything, documenting the evidence that would destroy both their careers and reputations. What happened next unfolded with the brutal efficiency I'd engineered, like a perfectly timed electrical system delivering exactly the voltage required to achieve the desired result. For the first few minutes, everything appeared normal through the surveillance footage. 2 people who clearly knew each other's bodies, well, comfortable with the intimacy that comes from an established physical relationship. Then gradually I began to see confusion creep across both their faces like clouds blocking the desert sun. Shane stopped moving first, his expression shifting from passion to concern, then rapidly to alarm. Melissa sat up abruptly, touching herself with growing panic, as she realized something was very, very wrong. Within seconds, both of them were scrambling apart like they'd been electrocuted, which, in a sense, they had been. Shane doubled over in visible agony while Melissa rushed toward our master bathroom, her hands pressed between her legs as she stumbled down the hallway. Through the audio feed, I could hear her screaming that something was burning, that she needed help, that something was terribly wrong. "What the hell was in that stuff?" Shane shouted, his voice strained with pain and confusion as he stumbled toward the guest bathroom. I don't know. Melissa Lam was crying now, and within minutes I heard her on the phone with 911, trying to explain through her tears that they needed an ambulance, that something had gone wrong during what she euphemistically described as intimate activity. I closed the tablet and began packing my hotel room. My conference wasn't scheduled to end until Sunday, but I'd catch the first available flight Saturday morning. It was time to return home and complete the final phase of my plan. The emergency room at Phoenix General Hospital was exactly where I knew they'd end up. Capsaicin burns take hours to fully subside, and I'd calculated the timing perfectly. I caught the 6 a.m. flight from Tucson, arrived in Phoenix by 7:30, and drove straight to the hospital, where I knew they'd still be seeking treatment. I found them in the emergency waiting area, looking like casualties from a chemical disaster. Shane was hunched forward in his chair, still wearing his wrinkled clothes from the night before, clearly in significant discomfort. Melissa sat several seats away. Interesting that they weren't consoling each other during their mutual crisis, wearing a hospital gown over her underwear, her red dress presumably ruined during their panicked flight from my house. They looked up when I walked in, and the expressions on their faces were absolutely priceless. Confusion, fear, and dawning realization crashed across Melissa's features like a power surge overloading a circuit board. "Wade," her voice cracked on my name. "What are you doing here? Your conference doesn't end until tomorrow." "Flight got canceled due to weather," I replied calmly, the lie rolling off my tongue as smoothly as electrical current through a copper wire. "Lucky thing too, or I might have missed this touching medical emergency." Shane started to stand, probably planning to escape this confrontation, but I held up my hand in a gesture that suggested he remain seated. "Please don't leave on my account. Dr. Martinez, I think we all need to have a very important conversation about professional ethics and personal responsibility." Melissa was shaking her head, desperately trying to construct some narrative that would make sense of this situation. "Wade, this isn't what it looks like. Shane and I were just using personal lubricant in my guest bedroom while we're supposed to be trying for a baby." I completed her sentence with the calm precision of someone stating technical specifications. "Because that's exactly what it looks like, Melissa. That's exactly what the high-definition security footage shows." The silence that followed was profound enough to hear the electrical hum of the hospital's fluorescent lighting. Other patients in the waiting room were beginning to stare, but I no longer cared about maintaining any pretense of privacy or discretion. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a manila envelope containing divorce papers I'd prepared weeks earlier. "Everything's already filed and processed. All you need to do is sign them." I slid the envelope across to Melissa, who stared at it like it might explode. "You might also be interested to know that I've documented everything over the past several months," I continued, with the methodical tone I used when explaining electrical problems to clients. "Phone records, surveillance footage, timeline analysis. Oh, and last night's activities are particularly well documented. High definition, perfect audio, time-stamped evidence that coincides perfectly with my documented presence at a medical conference in Tucson." Shane finally found his voice, though it sounded strained. "You set us up. You did something to that lubricant." I smiled genuinely for the first time in months. "That's a very serious accusation, Dr. Martinez. I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. I was attending a professional conference in Tucson, remember? 300 healthcare professionals can verify my presence there." The professional consequences unfolded exactly as I'd predicted. Phoenix General Hospital terminated Melissa's employment within 1 week, citing violations of their professional conduct policies and ethical guidelines. Her reputation in Phoenix's medical administration community was obliterated overnight, and no other hospital system would consider hiring someone involved in such a scandal. Shane faced disciplinary action from the medical board, formal ethics complaints, and the kind of professional humiliation that follows a surgeon who gets caught having affairs with hospital staff. His private practice suffered as word spread through Phoenix's tight-knit medical community. 6 months later, I'm writing this from my new apartment in downtown Phoenix, a modern 2-bedroom unit with mountain views and a dedicated workshop space for my electrical projects. It's smaller than the house Melissa and I shared, but it's mine completely, no shared. Mortgage, no joint accounts, no compromised ownership. My electrical contracting business has actually expanded since the divorce, Word spread through the construction and trades community about what happened, and other working men started specifically requesting Harrison Electric for their projects. There's a brotherhood among blue-collar professionals who respect systematic justice over emotional outbursts, who appreciate a man who handles betrayal with precision rather than rage. Sometimes the most important circuit you'll ever wire is the one that connects consequences to choices. Every action creates electrical potential that must find ground somewhere, and sometimes that ground runs straight through the lives of people who thought they could operate outside the basic laws of cause and effect.